Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parshat Beha'aloteha this morning. So we are beginning chapter 8 of the book of Numbers. So if you have your Bible, it's chapter 8 of the book of Numbers, verse 1. So something new and different. God spoke to Moshe, saying, Daber el Aharon ve'amarta elav beha'aloteha et hanerot el mul pnei hamenorah ya'iru shiv'at hanerot. So we speak to Aaron and tell him, when you go up, when you lift up, when you cause to be lifted up, what? The flames, el mul, which usually means facing, pnei hamenorah, facing the menorah, ya'iru shiv'at hanerot. You will light 7, meaning all 7 lights. I did not read the translation because I wanted you to hear how tangled the Hebrew is, right? It is not as simple as the translation makes it sound. So say to Aaron, when you mount the lamps, what does that mean? Mount the lamps. Let the 7 lamps give light at the front of the lampstand. How do you make light give light at the front of something? It's lit where it's lit. It's lit where it is on the menorah, right? So it's designed how it's designed. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And when you have something like this that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, it is an engraved invitation for the rabbis to explain what this really means and the many, many spiritual meanings that are here. Because the pshat the just simple, straightforward reading doesn't seem to help a lot in terms of God giving Aaron directions. So, of course, we're going to look into what the real spiritual meanings of all this is. Vayas kain Aharon, and Aharon did that. El mul pnei hamenorah, ha'ale nerotea. He mounted the lamps at the front of the lampstand, the menorah, kasher tziva Adonai Moshe, as God had commanded Moshe. V'zem aseh hamenorah miksha zahav. So this is how it was made. It was miksha, hammered, zahav, of gold. Ad yurecha, ad pricha, mikshahi. So from the base to the petals. Remember, there are petals at the top of each of the 7 branches. So all the way from the base to the petal was one piece, essentially. And it's all hammered from that one big piece of gold. According to the pattern that God had shown Moshe, so was the lampstand made. So God gives Moshe a vision of how it's supposed to be made, and Moshe did it exactly like that. By Deber Adonai Moshe limor, God speaks to Moshe again. Kach et haleviim mitoch bnei Israel v'tiharta otam. So take the Leviim, the Levites from amongst bnei Israel, and cause them to be tahor, cause them to be pure. So purify them. V'chol ta'aseh lahem l'toratam hazeh aleim. So this is how you will purify them. Sprinkle water on them. They shave their whole body. They wash their clothes, and they become pure. All right. So let's get back to this crazy menorah business. All right. So remember that the menorah is a 7-branched menorah. When we think menorah, we think Chanukah. So when we think menorah, what we are actually thinking about and envisioning is a Chanukiah. So a menorah is a general word for that which gives light. So anything that gives light is technically a menorah. The menorah in the temple, this one that we're talking about, that was how the priests did the daily ritual in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, and later in the temple, is a 7-branched menorah that is given, like the instructions, the design is given as part of the daily ritual that Aharon is to do. And how we know that it's not staying lit all the time is because he has to clean the wicks and light it every day. So we kind of have this idea that it was always burning from this idea of the eternal flame. That is not the menorah. It is lit every day as part of the ritual. And it's this 7-branched menorah. So let's start digging into what the rabbis do with this business of the menorah. So we're going to look at Rabbi Margolius. He points out, here are verses, by the way. Here's verses, right, 1 through 4. And Margolius points out, one of the first things we have to ask is, the specific language of this passage raises at least two questions. First, why is Beha'aloteha, in your raising up, used to describe the lighting of the menorah, right? So we just saw when you raise up the flames, right? Well, that's a very crazy way to say light the menorah. So even in Torah language, that's not the word you use for lighting. It would be lahadlik. So why isn't it in your lighting, in your kindling of the menorah? Why is it Beha'aloteha in your raising up? That doesn't make any sense. Rashi, so we go to Rashi, we go to one of our greatest Torah commentators ever, we go to Rashi. Rashi notes that the Torah uses an expression connoting ascent because flames naturally rise, meaning they reach up. And the priest must kindle the light until it ascends on its own. Rashi explains that the three branches on each side of the menorah, east and west, were oriented so that the wicks of all six faced towards the central branch. The menorah and its branches were hammered from one single block of gold, as opposed to individual pieces attached or fused together. As Rashi describes it, there was a block of gold weighing a talent, which must be a lot. The priest pounded it with a hammer and cut it with a chisel to extend its limbs in the prescribed manner. It was not made limb by limb and then connected together. All right. So there's lots, you can already hear there's a lot of spiritual teaching here, yeah? All right. So Rashi says, why does it say Beha'aloteha Handout, in your lifting up, in your causing to go up of the flames? It doesn't make any sense. It should say lahadlik. It should say, in your kindling those flames. And Rashi says, because it's not about, yes, you have to light them, but you have to stay there lighting. The priest has to stay there with the lighter until the flame he's lighting is going up on its own. Okay? There's already a spiritual teaching here. And then the other thing he's talking about is this is odd that it's a hammered piece of gold. Why are we told this, that it's one solid block? Because normally if you're going to make something like this, you make the branches and then you weld them together. You have a way to attach them to the base. You don't take one big piece of metal and try to chisel it into, that doesn't make any sense. That's not how stuff is made. You have a mold, you melt stuff, you put it into the mold, and whatever. So, but this is not the normal way, even in biblical times, to make a candelabra like this. But of course, it's going to have symbolism for us. The menorah thus physically symbolizes the paradoxical tension between the dimensions of multiplicity and oneness. The 7 branches and the 7 distinctive lights represent diversity and the uniqueness of each individual element. At the same time, the 7 branches or lights stem from a single source, the unitary block of gold, and are oriented towards the central unifying element, the central branch of the menorah. All right, so we're getting here, the beginning of the spiritual meaning of this is that you have 7 individual lights, because diversity is important. We want to have 7 distinct individual lights, but it should all be from one piece, right? So the flames are towards the central unifying element, the central branch. The 3 on each side face the central branch. That's one way to symbolize this unity within diversity, and then that it all comes from one block of gold is very clearly an instruction about we have many flames off one central piece, which of course symbolizes the divine in each human being. The symbolism is akin to light refracting through a prism, which is transformed into a variety of colors of the spectrum, but remains part of and flows out of the same single light. So this idea that he's bringing forward is like a prism takes white light and breaks it down into lots of different colors, but it still shines forward as generally as just light. But if we were to break it apart, we would see all of these many colors. This is the same idea here he's saying with the menorah. He says, the symbolism of the menorah reminds us to hold simultaneously both ends of a paradox, to embrace our sacred uniqueness as part of creation, while understanding our distinctiveness as manifesting creation's underlying oneness. This is the essence of the midah of anava. So the spiritual midah, the spiritual characteristic of anava, usually translated as humility, but also understood as proper taking up, if you will, the proper amount, the appropriate space or place. All right, so he's going to go off into this whole thing about anava. We are not going to follow him there because we have other work to do. All right, so that is a beautiful piece by Mark Margolius on this idea. But I want to go further into this idea of Beha'aloteha. And so I'm going to go to Rabbi Wolf Blank of blessed memory. He died in a car accident in his late 30s. He was the shining star student and heir apparent of the founder of Renewal, of Jewish Renewal. And so his death was left a huge hole in progressive Jewish thought and in Hasidism as we learn about it today. So Beha'aloteha. So when you lift the Neirot, when you cause the Neirot to go up, that's that first verse that we saw. Margolius comments it should have been lahadlik. And Rashi says that you have to light it until the flames go up on their own. I love this. So Rabbi Wolf Blank brings from Hasidism, from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of Chabad, that there's two meanings to this spiritual teaching. One is that when lighting up another person, you stay with them until they are lighted up with their own power. You don't just shine your light on them and walk away. And number two, in order to light up another person, Beha'aloteha, you have to go up first. So if we're going to help light someone, then we have to rise first before we can be about the business of doing that. All right, so on those two teachings, let's see if there's any. I saw something going to chat. How big was the menorah? That I do not know. Somebody can Google it right now. How big was the menorah? Because they're going to give me measurements that I don't understand anyway, right? They're going to give me from here to here on a man, although my arms usually are as long as men's. From here to here is a measurement that we see a lot in talking about the Mishkan. So, so if somebody wants to look it up, how big was the menorah in the tabernacle or in the temple, you can look it up, but I'm terrible with spatial stuff on a good day. So I don't know. But all right, so these two ideas, one is that it's meaningful that it's hammered of one piece of gold, because it is a unity that then is expressed in individuality that again faces towards the center. And this idea that it's about not the word kindling, but it's the word for going up or causing light to go up. So this idea that it says Beha'aloteha, in your doing this. So you have to go up, say the rabbis, when you're helping light someone else up. But also if you're going to help light up somebody else, you don't just, shine on them and then walk away. You stay with them, you accompany them until you teach them, until you listen to them, until you counsel them, until their own light, right, is the light that's lighting them up, not yours reflecting on them. So a couple of really beautiful teachings. Is there any comments or questions on those?
Why 7 branches? What's the symbolism of 7? 7 days of creation? Or if I were to make a menorah, I would have made it 10 branches, one for each tribe.
Except there are 12 tribes.
12 tribes, I mean. 12, yeah.
You would have made 12
yeah.
for the 12 tribes.
Well, just the missing tribes.
Okay, but I just love that you answered your own question because you've been studying Torah enough to know 7, boom, magic number, right? 7 is a magic number. So for sure, one of the rabbinic commentaries is why 7? Because it's the 7 days of creation. And what does it do? What does this whole business do? It's a menorah. It's about or. It's about light. So it's the 7 days of creation and the primordial lights, because it's not the light of the sun, remember, because the sun was created on the 4th day and light was created on the 1st day. So this is a different light. The primordial light that lights the world, right? God's primordial light that happens at Vayihi Or, let there be light. That is the light that the menorah symbolizes, and the 7 days of creation. Absolutely. But there's more. Because, say the rabbis, remember when we studied, those of us who studied the spherotic system, the 10 sphirot, there are the 3 upper sphirot, and then there are the 7 lower sphirot that kind of is what, we're all mostly enmeshed in. And so it is the 7 lower sphirot that kind of, that each soul is dealing with all the time, right? We're in one of those sphirot or a combination of those 7 sphirot all the time. And so that's why 7 as well. So Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi wrote in Likutei Torah, again, this is Rabbi Wolf Blank bringing this forward, when it says, to light, when you light the lamps, as you face the menorah, light all 7. Well, of course you're going to light all 7. What, you're going to light 2? You're going to light every other one? Of course you're going to light all 7, unless it's Hanukkah, in which case that's a whole nother thing. So it seems a little Department of Redundancy department. God forbid. This is Torah, so it can't be. So Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi says each soul is a lamp. And the menorah is the soul tree, which collectively holds, connects, and unites all the souls. The menorah represents the collective soul. Aharon embodies the thread of godliness in the enlightened ones, who can bring out the fire in every soul, whose job it is to light up the entire soul tree. Let Aharon know that his job is not complete with lighting up a few souls, but must kindle all souls of whichever variety. They must all be reached. Let them all be lighted up. So this is a Hasidic teaching that says, guess what, Hasidic masters? You don't get to choose which Yidden you want to teach and which Yidden you feel don't deserve your attention. You don't get to masters, teachers, inspirers, counselors, soul tenders. You don't get to decide which soul is deserving of being lit up. The Aharon in you, the one that helps bring forth the godliness in people, the Aharon in you is commanded, light them all. You don't get to pick, which I think is a fabulously wonderful democratizing teaching from, a tradition, the Hasidic tradition that could be pretty hierarchical, right? Mehmet, your hands up.
As you've been highlighting over and over, Shabbat is one of the biggest inventions of the Jewish people. I see the central branch symbolizes as much God as well as Shabbat culturally, as a cultural and religious invention. And another note is Near Eastern societies are incredibly tribal. And I believe up to the point of the formation of the Rabbinic Judaism, the Israelites were probably also very fragmented and very tribal. I guess the menorah and the central branch also symbolizes the unity, the formation of the unity of the Jewish people. That's how I
Beautiful. Because we take it for granted that these tribes are a confederation called Israel or Israel, Judah, right? We just take that for granted, but remember, they lasted 100 years. That was it. So, all the history before that and all the history after that, I mean, they could only pull it together for 100 years. And we have to believe they were a fractious 100 years. It never really worked. It never really took.
But we survived as a people.
Well, we survived. And how did we survive? Because guess what? The tribes went away. I mean, I think that's part of how we survived, is that we became the Jewish people, and the distinctions of Binyamin, Gad, Yisachar, all of that went away. And we started living into this idea of unity, that we are one people. And you're right, that's how we...
Our Abrahamic brothers and sisters, our neighbors in the Near East, they are still very tribal. They never crossed that boundary.
It's human nature, right? And look at our country. So we may not be calling them tribes, but we are so deeply polarized right now that someone just has to start one sentence, and I'm like, oh, one of them. They're one of them, not one of us, right? There's a very clear us and them. I mean, it's human nature, and we're constantly fighting, I think, against that nature towards, division as opposed to unity, because it's not easy. Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha is written the way it is on purpose. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Not your friend, not the person in your tribe, your neighbor, the one you just happen to find yourself next to, because you may be, it's most likely that you're going to be drawn not to love them, right? That you're going to have what to fight over. Boundaries and fences, and whose apple tree is it, and how come your bull keeps getting into my yard, right? So it's hardest, right, to love sometimes the people you're in closest proximity to, and it's hard being human beings, like living together with diverse opinions and ways of seeing things and interests and agendas, and I think our tradition's pretty good about acknowledging that, right? The menorah is there to say, like, you don't get to go where it's naturally more comfortable for you to go. You have to live into this understanding, that this radical idea that the divine is in everyone equally. Judith?
So there's no shamas on this candelabra.
No.
And the order in which they're lighted, is that determined also?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
There's no shamash because there's no need for one.
Right.
The only reason we have a shamash is because you're not allowed to gain any benefit from the light of the menorah. So the shamash is higher, so that if, God forbid, you're reading a book and it starts to get dark and you're gaining light from the menorah, it didn't come from one of the 8 candles. It came from the 9th shamash.
Right.
So it is a legal protection against benefiting from the light of the menorah, as opposed to Shabbat, where you are allowed to benefit from the light of the Shabbat candles. So there's no shamash for the Shabbat candles either, nor for this menorah, because presumably nobody was going to benefit from the light of this menorah because it was in the Mishkan. And the Israelites couldn't be in the Mishkan, right? Only the priests.
And these candles you never blow out either, right?
They would have been relit every day.
Okay.
The wicks would have been cleaned and the oil changed to be fresh, pure oil every day.
Okay.
Okay. So Rev Avraham agrees with Sheldon. Rev Avraham says the 7 branches of the menorah represent the 7 days of creation, and the light of the flames of the menorah represent the day of creation when God first said, "Let there be light," and there was the primordial light. Reb Naftali said, the 7 branches of the menorah represent the 7 sfirot that emanate in the world below, while the oil, the wick, and the flames of each of them represent the 3 sfirot of the world above. The menorah reveals how the worlds above and below may be drawn together, so that the light originating in the world above may also be reflected here below. So our work, of course, is to be Aharon. Our work is to access the priest or priestess within each one of us that can bring, the wick, the oil, and the flame, right, to meet the 7 lower sfirot. It's our job as human beings to figure out how to bring the light from above down here into the regular world through our interactions with each other, through our service to the divine, whatever our avodah, whatever our work, whatever our service is at this moment in time. I think it's a beautiful metaphor right now for how do we reach past some of the crazy or through the crazy, using the crazy right now, right, to access the light from above. How do we pull on that and pull from below and cause what looks like a bunch of division and a bunch of different stuff going on? How do we pull that into one menorah, one way of bringing light to this world? And that's going to mean figuring out how to come together, right? That's the definition of why the menorah was made from one piece of gold. That's the one block of gold. That's the definition of why they're oriented like they are towards the center. It's all because it's supposed to be this idea of unity, but not by giving up our diversity, right? And I think that is a moment we're living in for sure right now. How do we create a menorah out of this business? How do we bring light through all of this that's going on? How do we create, right, something that is enlightening without giving up our diversity and our differences? And it's a challenge. The rabbis don't pretend that it's easy, and they don't pretend that it's not a challenge or that it's not super hard. It is.
Amy,
yes.
I can answer my own question, which is how big is the menorah?
Yeah.
And evidently it was not an easy thing to light. According to Wikipedia, quote, in Jewish oral tradition, the menorah stood 18 handbreadths or palms, 3 common cubits, or approximately 1.62 meters, which is 5.3 feet. So lighting the gold block had to be pretty big.
Pretty big.
And lighting it, the people didn't dominate it. Well, that's how big it was. Right.
And this is, some people want to point to that being the reason we have this word about going up. It's because the priest literally had to go up. They would have had to go upstairs to light it. But that really is about you going up. It's not about you causing them to go up. But some people want to link going up to light it because you literally had to go up to light it. Did someone have a question or a comment?
Michael,
speak.
You managed to negotiate it just maybe of interest that 7 in pagan theology is the number of Athena. It's the number of purity, wisdom and purity. So we've got obviously a tradition of 7 that I'm sure transcends all sorts of national.
100%. Yep. In the ancient world, 7 would have been one of your magic
7 stars in the Pleiades and so forth.
So 3, 7, right? There are a lot of these numbers that appear, all over the place in traditions of regarding magic, regarding power, regarding luck, fortune, manipulating things like this. So yes, absolutely.
In alchemy, you have 7.
And alchemy, exactly. So all over the ancient world, and then moving forward out of the ancient world even. So from the Midbar Shur, we get a teaching that says the Torah stresses that when you light the lamps, meaning you awaken your intellectual powers, when we work towards that individual enlightenment that suits our particular character, right? One of those 7 lower sefirot, we're always in one of those. So we're always coming out of one of those places. And our learning, says the Midbar Shur, is always about what we need coming out of that particular sefirah at any particular moment. So when we do the learning that is particular to us, right, each of the little flames, we should take care that this wisdom will shine towards the center of the menorah. What is the center of the menorah? This is the wisdom of the Torah itself. We need to draw specifically from the light of Torah, whose source is the underlying unity of all wisdom. But I believe it works the other way as well, that our learning shouldn't just be about us and about what I need in this moment and my particular learning in this moment. It needs to shine towards the center, right? My learning needs to help be focused and shine towards the center. It isn't just about me, right? I should be contributing out of that. In truth, the 7 branches of the menorah are not truly distinct separate paths. All 7 receive light from the unified wisdom with which God enlightens this world. For this reason, the menorah was fashioned from a single piece of gold, mishka zahav. The special manner in which the menorah was formed reveals the underlying unity of all forms of wisdom. So all these beautiful teachings out of the Hasidic tradition, all from these 4 verses of Torah. And like I said, the more tangled it is, the more of an invitation to the rabbis to say why it's written this way and not another way. All right, so let me go to, so I want to show you, if you really immerse yourself in this kind of translation, interpretation of Torah, you become fluent. So just like Sheldon was able to answer his own question because he's become fluent in the number 7, the number 7 being symbolic of the 7 days of creation, right? And then everything that would flow from there. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going down that road, but that rabbit hole, but you get it, right? Like, so it's not just the 7 days of creation, right? It's like everything that means. So whenever we see 7, alarms should be going off, right? And about Shabbat, right? The 7th is the sacred, is Shabbat. So that set of 7 is completion. We could go on. I know each of you could go on for another 5 minutes about what that 7 really means. So once you start to read Torah like that it starts to, jump out at you, and that ner, right? Ner, flame, of course means soul, like duh, right? Because in another place we see in Torah, it's on our sanctuary. It's on the wall in our sanctuary. Ner, nishmat adam, ner Adonai. The soul of the human being is the ner, or is it? I forget. But it's like the soul is the ner, right? And so once you start reading like this, you can look at any passage of Torah and things start to jump off the page. And you're no longer reading it as just God spoke to Moshe saying, right? Aharon is symbolic of love. He was Rodef Shalom. He chased down peace, and he did all kinds of craziness in the Midrashim. In the Midrashic literature, he does all kinds of crazy things to try to bring peace, right? Moshe and Miriam get in a fight. Moshe learns that Miriam said something about him. And there's friction. So Aharon runs to Moshe and says, Miriam is really sorry and she wants to make up. And he runs to Miriam and he says, Moshe is really sorry. He wants to make up. Neither one of them have said anything about being sorry and wanting to make up. But because they each hear this from Aharon, they go and they make up, and there's shalom bayit. There's peace in the family. There's peace in the home. So this is our Aharon. So once you are steeped enough in these Midrashic and Hasidic and other kinds of spiritual interpretations, you can start to translate the Torah on your own a little differently. I am not expert enough yet to do that. I can do a little, but not a ton. But I want to show you what an alternative translation from somebody deeply steeped in these kinds of teachings what it looks like, okay? It's super fun. Just go with me. You don't have to buy it, but I want you to see how somebody else might read who has a very, very deep knowledge of the spiritual, Kabbalistic, Hasidic, Midrashic tradition, okay? So it's just a game. Just be willing to play. Willing suspension of disbelief, as my literature teacher used to say. So on the right is the literal translation that you would find. On the left is this different kind of translation. Okay, ready? We're going to take us line by line. Vaydaber Adonai. That seems pretty clear. Yud-Heh Vav-Heh spoke. Don't be fooled that it's that simple. There's many words for speaking. Diber, Amar, Lehagid. There are all these different words. Daber has the very unique quality, according to the spiritual tradition, of being speech that is clear, direct and clear. There's other kinds of speech. But so that's why in this particular instance, this word for speaking is used because God spoke very clearly. The infinite spoke so clearly, El Moshe, through the Moses sub-personality within each of us. You shouldn't think, God forbid, that this is a moment when God talked to Moses 3,000 years ago. God forbid. This is a spiritual teaching for us for all time, which means this pasuk, this set of psukim, this set of verses is coming to speak to the Moshe in each of us. That aspect of ourselves. Okay, the infinite spoke so clearly through the Moshe personality within each of us. Daber el Aharon, right? Use this kind of direct and clear speech to the Aharon sub-personality. And what is that sub-personality about? That's about love. So how might you translate Daber el Aharon? Give Aharon, the Aharon within you, your love quality. Give it clear direction. Speak clearly to it. Ve'amarta elav. See, this is a different word for speaking. Ve'amarta elav. Communicate in a way that is gentle. Diber is about clarity and directness. Amar, speaking using the word amar, is about being gentle. Phrasing things in a way that it's careful. That might even be a little circumspect. Are you sure you want to wear that blouse with that skirt? Are you sure? Right? So maybe not so direct, right? But lots of different kinds of speech. All right. So Diber el Aharon, speak clearly, right? Or give clarity to Aharon, your love quality. Communicate in a way that is gentle. Beha'aloteha, when you come to lift up. Remember, it's about you lifting up to Aharon. When your love quality comes to lift up et hanerot. Of course, what does nerot mean? The souls of the people. So communicate in a way that is gentle when you come to lift up the souls of the people. El mul, meaning facing. Orient them. Pnei hamenorah, literally the face of the lampstand, to the depths of the light source is how he translates this. Ya'iru, thus they shall give light. So he says, if you're really back in this other translation, this other way of understanding this text, when you come to lift up the souls of the people, orient them, right, to the depths of the light source so that you initiate them to give off their own light. Right? That Ya'iru. Let them, that literally the word means let them give light. You're doing this, you're approaching people, when you approach people in order like to lift them up, do it in a way that empowers them to give off their own light. Shiv'at hanerot, from whichever of the 7 sfirot the nature of the various soul happens to be. Vaya'as kein Aharon literally means and Aharon did so. But if we're reading on this other level, the love quality, the Aharon responds. El mul pnei hamenorah, orienting to the depths of the light source. He'ale nerotea, the souls of all the people are lifted up. Ka'asher tzivat Adonai, literally as God commanded, but in our other language, as the infinite had prepared the connection. He wants to use tzivah, there is a sense of tzivah that's connecting, not just commanding. So as the infinite had prepared the connection, et Moshe, with the Moses sub-personality inside each of us. V'zeh ma'aseh hamenorah. Literally, this is the making of the lampstand. But what does he say? This is the lowest acceptable level of the enlightenment work with people. Right? The origin. This is the lowest level. Miksheh zahav, hammered work of gold. What is the lowest acceptable level of the enlightenment work with people? Freedom from the hammering of gold-related fears. Right? So rather than hammered work of gold, it's freedom from the hammering of essentially our obsession or our anxiety related to zahav, related to gold, meaning money. Ad yerecha, from its base, literally is what it means, but either dealing with their base issues, right? They're dealing with survival issues. Oops. To its flowers, right? Or luxury explorations. So from the basest of our issues to the floweriest, fanciest tops of the branches explorations, mikshehi, it's hammered. Let your work with the people be free from this, hammering that we know is about zahav, is about obsession or anxiety around gold. Kimar'eh, and which literally means according to the pattern, but mar'eh means it's from the verb to see, an appearance. Just as the purity of the original vision is pure, asher har'ah, again from having made visible, but in this case that God had made visible, which the infinite enlightened, because he's going to play on or. Instead of being from har'ah, being from to see or to be appear, he plays with it being about or. Har'ah, about or, God enlightened. The Moshe personality inside you. Kain aseh menorah. Thus shall he made the lampstand. In our translation, in this way, the source of light can begin its work at rudimentary levels. Ken asa et menorah. Asa, like aseh, is doing at the basest level. It's not fancy. All right, so you begin to see like this other level below the text, which I just love. Vayaske Aharon, this beginning of verse 3, and Aharon did so. It's that the Aharon within you responds to this. If you start to read Torah at this level, if you start to read Torah this way, it starts to jump off the page and it starts to become spiritual teaching, the whole thing. Even Daber el Aharon, or God spoke to Moshe. How did God speak to Moshe? With what quality of speech? Right? All of those now become habit that you start to read all of those into all of these different kinds of verses. So just wanting to give you a flavor of what it is to look beneath the text the way someone like Rabbi Wolf Blank of blessed memory could do. I can't translate like that, but it's there, right? That according to our tradition, it's there. And I just love that whole other layer is what we're always working in Torah study to get to. We're always looking, through the meanings down to what our tradition has mined out of all of our collective teachings, and reading it back into the pshat, reading it back into what looks like God spoke to Moshe. That's just a third grader's understanding. God spoke to Moshe, right? So, but I so love that. All right, I want to close sharing with you a beautiful thing that we received from our teacher in Israel. So Dr. Malila Helner Eshed sent us this beautiful piece, and she's our teacher at Hartman. And so she sent this to those of us who are involved in the Hartman stuff. It is Friday morning in Jerusalem, preparing for Shabbat Beha'aloteha and thinking of you all. Today is a day of clergy ta'anit, a fast, calling into awareness a state of moral emergency at the killing of George Floyd and Iyad al-Halak. The ta'anit was put forward by Rabbi Tamar Elad and these other folks. So she goes on to talk a little bit about the fast, but this is what I wanted to bring to you. I've been following the Chevraya emails from far away Israel, Bechinat v'tetatzev achoto merachok, as Miriam stands from afar to see what will happen to Moshe. As a sister of yours, I have been doing this from the beginning of the spread of coronavirus in the States, when here in Israel we were already in tight lockdown. Now we are in this great storm of rage and demand for change. There is a felt deepening of unknowing, awakening pain and fear, maybe some birth pangs. I wish to tell you how inspiring it is for me to see the network of help, creativity, support, last-minute solutions, and presence of spirit brought about by so many of you. I stand in awe at the challenges you face being Jewish spiritual leaders in North America at this time, but I want to get to the text. I am so grateful and proud at the way that IJS, the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, has created this living web of Torah, ritual, ideas, and heart. I am honored by being part of this. So that piece I read to you by Mark Margolius is from IJS, is from the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. So she's reading all of the stuff that we're reading together as well. We read Beha'aloteha and know that any sanctuary needs light. As living mishkanim that bring light, I send you the Zohar. She's an expert in Zohar and that period of mystical writing. As living mishkanim that bring light, I send you the Zohar's inspiring words, reminding us that we have been placed in the world to try and bring more light, connectedness, and consciousness of oneness. So all this stuff we've been talking about, that's what this is code, right, for Shabbat Beha'aloteha. She knows that we know what she means, that we're studying about the menorah. I love this. A rabbi talking to rabbis. As living mishkanim that bring light, I send you the Zohar's inspiring words, reminding us that we have been placed in the world to try and bring more light, connectedness, and consciousness of oneness. Shabbat Shalom, all my love from Yerushalayim, Malila. And here's what I wanted to give you the context, but this is such a beautiful teaching from the Zohar related to what we just studied. Ready? Sheharei b'nei Yisrael kayamim lemata, liftoach drachim, ulaha'ir shvilim, ulahadlik orot, ulakarev hakol milamata lemala, liyot hakol echad. Ve'al kein katuv, ve'atem hadvekim ba'adonai Elohechem, chayim kulchem hayom. So beautiful. Sheharei b'nei Yisrael kayamim lemata, for the people of Israel, kayamim lemata are established below. We exist below, meaning here on earth. Liftoach drachim, to open ways or paths. Ulaha'ir shvilim, and to light up paths. Ulahadlik orot, and to kindle, to light lights, to light lamps. Ulakarev hakol, and to draw everything, right? This is karov, this is to come close. Ulakarev, so, and to cause to come close everything. Milimata, from below, limala, to above. Lihiyot hakol echad, so that everything will be one. And therefore it is written, y'all, cleaving to Yud He Vav He, your God, are alive, each one of you today. Meaning the point of our life, the point of us being here, the point of each one of us being alive is to cleave to God. And the whole point of that business is l'karev hakol milamata lilamala, to bring everything from below to above, so that everything should be one. That is the Zohar, our mystical teaching about Beha'aloteha, about this whole business of the menorah, about multiplicity and oneness, and the paradox of that. It's so beautiful to have words of Torah brought to you by a beloved teacher. I've never heard these words of Torah ever from the Zohar. I've never heard this teaching. So to get that from Yerushalayim, to get that from Jerusalem is just such an incredible gift. And again, once you become fluent in any of this and attached to any of this and connected to the symbolism of any of this, you start to really appreciate how beautiful the tradition is. And to receive a pearl like this from your rabbi and teacher is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I wanted to share it with all of you. It was very moving to me. The Zohar talking about the whole point of our existence is to bring the below close to the above, and that only human beings can do that work. Only humanity can do that work. And as messy as it looks in the streets right now, she's calling those birth pangs, hopefully. Birth pangs, the pain, the agony, the tearing, and the bleeding of something new coming into existence, something being born. And only human beings can do that. Only we can bring lamala to lamata to lamala. Only we can do the work of bringing what's down below up to what's above, so that everything becomes echad. Everything is one. And so for me, these words were just so, and she offered them at this moment. She didn't pick these for no reason, right? It's related to our parsha, but it's also because she looks and sees what's happening with COVID and with, what's the protests in the street. And she's like us. It hurts, but yet she sees the response of American rabbis to what's happening, and she's proud and she's moved, and she knows that only we can do this work. And I say that to you. Each one of you is doing it in your world and in your family and in your community and with the people that you know and within our community as well, and bringing it here. And only we can do that. As messy and as painful and as confusing and as messed up as it can be, we are the only ones, humanity is the only ones who can do this work, so that everything becomes echad, so that everything is unified and everything is one.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.